Hi there, and welcome back to Spark the Flame. This should be a video log, and today, in this one, we will talk about, well, um, where I found meaning in a surprising place. And this is piggybacking off of the previous podcast, which is podcast number 27, and that one is where I detailed the difficulties I had with logically deciding why to continue living. Now, if you've been listening and watching my videos, well, I'm very grateful and blessed that you have, and I appreciate it thoroughly, more than I can say. And you might be kind of nervous or scared or put off or wondering why I keep talking about meaninglessness, reasons to live, suicidal thoughts, and all kinds of things that sort of relate to this. So, like I did in my last video, I want to put you and everyone I care about at ease by saying that in this regard, I'm blessed and I'm okay. But I'm okay because I stopped smoking marijuana, and I've basically, at this point, I realized that it's just one factor in a group of factors that have contributed. I'm not going to call them suicidal thoughts. I think more it's a existential crisis that I was really struggling with, and it was scary. The struggle itself was scaring me because I couldn't find reasons to win the logical argument of why I should stay here. I'm not going to get into that detail very much because, well, the one I got into most of that detail last podcast, video podcast number 27. But one piece that I missed that's important is that because my job during the daytime, I'm a computer programmer, I don't find much meaning in what I do, even though I try to. And there is meaning if I struggle and all kinds of things. It's hard to describe, but essentially, I feel like I was meant. I should be using other kinds of strengths to do things for most of my time, where I contribute more in the way that I can best contribute. So, here's an analogy, okay? Let's say a box, a shipment had to cross a river, and then it had to climb over a hill, okay? And we have two animals that need to do this. We only have two animals to get this box across, okay? One animal is like a large fish or an alligator, some kind of water. No, not an alligator, a fish. Okay? A fish. And then the other animal is like a large monkey. All right. So, now as far as I know, a lot of monkeys don't swim. So I think this is a good analogy. So we have a box that needs to cross water and it needs to go over a hill. What makes sense? The fish takes the box across the water, and then the monkey takes the box over the hill. Now, what happens if those roles are reversed? The monkey, if you give the the box to the monkey to cross the water, it's going to be hard for that box to get across the water. If you give the fish the box to take it over the hill, it's going to be hard. Why? Because those aren't the environments that they're more suited for. So, this analogy that I'm saying right here is how I feel about my own place in the workplace. I'm not as bad as a fish out of water. However, I have strengths that I feel are better suited elsewhere. And while the case is that I'm not doing that, I'm not using these strengths for most of my time, most of my waking time, because my waking hours are like doing other things in my job, which is technology programming. Then it becomes questions of meaninglessness, purposelessness. These questions can arise because I'm like, why am I here spending time doing things that I'm not even that great at? I'm not using my greatest strength and my greatest potential. It's sort of like I'm wasting my energy. Why am I here? So, especially if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, why am I here? If I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. Okay. So that was a piece I kind of forgot to mention in the last number 27, video podcast number 27. And so this is a main factor in different factors, and I guess quickly I'll recap. The other factors were that I was thinking about answers to why not suicide. I was thinking about that for my book. I was thinking about that to come up with an answer for other people if they were thinking about it. And I feel like I didn't come up with correct answers, like good enough answers. So that was in the back of my head. Another factor is that someone close to me in my life had suicided. And that opened a door of reality. Basically, like it made that a realistic, a realistic option, actually. But then my self-therapy, I told myself that it's not an option, but that was later. It's up to me whether it's an option or not. And the other factor is that I was on like peyote. I tried peyote and ayahuasca and marijuana, and I was been smoking a lot of marijuana, but mind-altering chemicals and drugs, and I am not demonizing any of them. I know that each of them can be used for good. But all those factors in my life put together created an existential crisis where I was questioning, why am I here if I'm not enjoying my life? And there is this exit strategy. And just the final recap, okay? I wasn't going to hurt myself. I was going to spiritually ascend, let go of this life, and go somewhere spiritually, like join the greater God consciousness, whatever this is, whatever. So that's the very quick recap. And I know that may sound crazy if you're not really following like the previous episodes. So, once again, I'm good. Thank God. But what I want to say is that, so I was clear of marijuana for about 2 months, and then I went to San Francisco. This was in April. I smoked a little bit for for a week here and there. I came back, and then all of a sudden I was in this crisis. It came out of nowhere. It came out of the blue, and it was very scary because I couldn't logically convince myself of good reasons to stay here. Another recap is that, based on my ayahuasca experiences, all these things that the people in my life love, and my family, and all these beautiful things, my ayahuasca experience showed me everything as illusion. So if everything is illusion, what's the point in staying here? So this is part of the mental debate that I was in. And I know now that because of the influence of marijuana, in my case, it gave me I was in this existential crisis where I was very scared because I couldn't come up with good enough answers to stay here. So I was very scared, and this was a day that I came back to work, and I contacted a friend who I knew would understand me, because this friend was kind of went through something similar. And we went to the park, and I opened up and I cried, and I said everything that I was going through, about not being able to come up with logical answers to why I should stay here, and how scary that was, that I couldn't come up with logical answers. And I was so upset. And a crazy thing happened. Now, the pretext is that, I guess what we could say is, I didn't see meaning in things. If everything is an illusion, if I'm not happy most of my time when I'm alive because I'm doing work that I don't want to be doing, and which I find rather meaningless, and I'm sort of not being used for what I feel like should be used for, which is working with people, inspiring others, ironically, inspiration, or opening up. So the subtext for my inability to come up with a good response to these questions the subtext is that nothing had meaning. Like nothing was meaningful. Like very little, or like, especially when everything that I loved came down to illusion. Something crazy happened when I was explaining all of this, and I cried, and I was, like I was saying, so upset, and just opening up and saying everything and pouring out my heart. Something crazy happened, and what that was that as I expressed everything in myself, I saw and I felt meaning arising in the middle, right there, out of me expressing my authenticity. In other words, me being real, me pouring out my heart, me expressing myself genuinely, being real. At that point, I had nothing else better to do. If I'm really considering there's no reason to stay, I might as well pour out my heart. Me doing that, I saw meaning and I felt this vitality of life, this spiritual juice, this life. I felt it. And all of a sudden I was like, this moment is meaning. It is absolutely chock full of absolute pure meaning. This moment where I was with my friend and my friend was there listening to me and we were totally open, connecting, and real and true and open and honest. And it was a lifesaver. And I was so surprised. And I was like, I remember, I was like, this right here is meaningful. And I was so surprised. And I told my friend that in the moment. I was like, this is meaningful. And I was like, I just couldn't believe because it just came out of nowhere. So I'm sharing this because I don't know exactly what it was that allowed that meaning to arise, created it. The authenticity, maybe the fact that I allowed myself to express, to be. I allowed myself to be. So if we are each human creatures that can express, speaking, acting, thinking, feeling, I think a lot of us, a lot of the time, hinder what we really want to say in our thoughts, in our actions, in our being. And I'm not talking about negative things. What I'm saying is when we stop ourselves because we're afraid of how other people look at us, but we stop what we really need to share. I think that is hindering this incredible meaning, because maybe it's what we're supposed to be doing, like truly just expressing ourselves as much as we can, as authentically and truthfully as we can, whatever our own truth is, based on our own lives, because we have different lives, different experiences, and so we have different truths sometimes, I think. So that's something, my core point right now is that there was meaning that just arose like a beautiful tree out of me expressing myself truthfully and openly. And it was so beautiful, so gorgeous. And it was the life that I want to feel. Instead of being a walking dead, I want to live where I have this spirit, the spiritual. I want to say spirit, and I want to say both. But right now I'm going to say spirit, the spirit. And this, which is a vitality, a sort of gusto for life. This is what I want, in a good way. And yes, I felt it when I was expressing myself truthfully and openly. So that is the moral of that main story. I spoke to my uncle yesterday, and I told him, well, he told me something beautiful. He said, well, I wrote it down. He said, something unexplainable that makes life worth living. He said it's something unexplainable that makes life worth living. Yeah, and I'm over here making videos, trying to decipher things and explain things, and meanwhile, still having tons of issues, just like a lot of other people. And then I was struck by the beauty of that point where it's unexplainable what makes life worth living.